Welcome back to the Adaptive Athlete Podcast, the place for conversations with adaptive athletes in the CrossFit space and beyond. I'm your host, Matt Hotho. On today's episode, I'm talking with Tori Clinch. Tori is a rookie competing in the Seeded 2 division. And if you'd told her a year ago that she'd be heading to the 2026 CrossFit Games in San Jose, she would not have believed you. She only got back into CrossFit this January, not to compete, but just to get her sanity back, and ended up finishing first in the Open and first at semis. We talk about her path to adaptive CrossFit, an above-knee amputation after months of sepsis and surgery, the box that turned her away when she started using a wheelchair, and the box, CrossFit Bra, that said yes without hesitation. And 5 of their members are flying to San Jose just to cheer her on. We also get into the Matt Hampson Foundation, wheelchair basketball, and what she'd tell herself back in that hospital bed. So here's my conversation with Tori Clinch. Tori Clinch, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on. So we were just talking a moment ago, and you said that starting 2026, you had no idea that this was going to be on the radar for you in 2026. So how's your year been going? Just to start there.
Yeah, so it's been a bit of a whirlwind year for me, really. I moved house in December 2025, and when I relocated, I joined a new CrossFit box. So I only went back to CrossFit in January. And at that point, I had no intention whatsoever of competing this year. I just wanted to get back for my own sanity. Like, CrossFit's one of my outlets. I really, really enjoy it for myself. And that was why I did it. So to be in this position now with the games coming up and training as much as I am, it's crazy. I just didn't see my year going that way at all. I play a lot of wheelchair basketball, and that had always been my priority since my second accident, and my focus for the last year or so. So it's really interesting to have a new focus and just be in this position today.
Right. Like, you're playing wheelchair basketball. You're like, oh, I like this sport. This is a fun sport. And then in February, someone maybe says to you, hey, this CrossFit Open thing, you should try it out. And then next thing you know, you finish first in the Open, first in semis, and you're heading off to San Jose with a target on your back, I would say. I mean, you know, by being first in the Open and the semis, I think there's going to be some athletes gunning for you. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. I just never foresaw that I would be in this position because, as I say, like, if you go back 12 months ago, I wasn't actually doing any CrossFit. Yeah. Well, 12 months today, exactly. I won the Hambo Throwdown, which was my first experience of adaptive CrossFit, I suppose. And that was something I hadn't trained for at all. But it came up in my memories this morning, and I completely forgot that it was exactly a year ago today.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. Full circle.
That is amazing. So the Matt Hampson Foundation, tell us about it, because we know a lot of people, right? People on the podcast have come and gone who have known James Sutliff, known Sophie Wilson, known Matt Hampson. But what's the Matt Hampson Foundation, and how does it fit into your story?
Yeah, so the Hambo Foundation's a big family, big community. It's a charity where people are beneficiaries, and when you become a beneficiary, you stay a beneficiary for life. And it's for people injured through sport, get back to sport. And just the whole mantra of the foundation is get busy living. So Hambo's given me a very different perspective since, as I say, my second injury. That no is never an answer. It's always, we'll just find a way. We'll find a way to do that. You shouldn't just accept no. We'll find yes, and we'll make it happen. There's always like adaptations to be had or different routes to take. It doesn't have to be the conventional one. So I go down there, try and go down there every couple of weeks for my physio, sports therapy, counselling, everything. They've encouraged me to get back to work, get back to everyday life, and really pushed me forwards in absolutely anything that I want to achieve. They support you in that and help find solutions as to how to do that.
So that blows my mind. So you're telling me that, like, they're holistic in the sense of it's not just PT, it's not just physio, it's also counseling and, like, really that mindset kind of stuff that comes with getting injured in sport and then getting back into sport?
100%. So it's the whole community, and it's being surrounded by people who are in exactly the same situation as you, or maybe in slightly different situations. But when you go in, you never really feel like you have a disability, because everybody has a disability. And it's just that understanding. They do support groups for family and friends as well. So like my mum, she joins in on like the parent support group. So she can speak to other parents who've had children who are in similar position. I mean, some of the beneficiaries are in their 60s, 70s. There is quite an array of different age groups. It's not all just young people who are involved with the foundation. But yeah, you get the full holistic package of, I do yoga there. I do all sorts. So it's a whole like mind, body, well-being, and just everyday life. It's a really, really cool place to be.
Wow. That's just so cool. I've seen Suddy's stories, and it
Yeah.
looks like a really cool place, but I had no idea it was more than, just like a PT for people with disabilities. So
Yeah, it's a whole package.
that's awesome. And you guys also do community events all the time. Like you were talking about the Throwdown,
Yeah.
but also you guys did the London Half Marathon and the London Full Marathon recently.
Yeah, so there's always opportunities for beneficiaries to get involved, and other like supporters of the foundation to help raise the vital funds that the foundation needs to be able to keep supporting people. So last year I did the London Landmarks Half Marathon in my wheelchair. And then this year I got coerced into doing the London Marathon in my wheelchair. And I actually did it with my physio. My physio, Charlie, ran alongside me. So he'd never ran a marathon before, unlike some of the other ones like Sutty, who's run many marathons.
Yeah.
This was Charlie's first one. So it was really good to have that experience with him. So just something I'd have never done previously without their support or them saying, this is a good idea, you should go do this.
That's really cool. And so having that community with you probably helped you kind of get through what I imagine was probably a long marathon. How long does it take to do a marathon in a chair?
Yeah, so it took, we did it in just under 5 hours, but it was not the best experience. Somebody broke my freewheel on my chair halfway around after mile 12. So just after Tower Bridge, like the big famous one you see, somebody kicked my freewheel and it put it completely off center. So that second half of the marathon was an absolute mental game. Like when people say about like zoning out and locking in, that's exactly what we did. The course was very, very congested from a wheelchair user's perspective. I lost my voice by the end of it from just shouting like wheelchair coming through, wheelchair on your left, wheelchair on your right. And so did Charlie, just from having to tap people and say you couldn't get into any kind of continual pace because people would stop, people would cut you up. So that was quite challenging. It was a cool experience, but it made me realize how much I love CrossFit and how much I don't love endurance sports for the sake of a full marathon. But yeah, it was a good experience. It was just a shame that when I've seen the videos of some people in the second half of the course taking videos of different chairs kind of like pushing by, and they're just a couple of lovely pushes at a straight row, and then you see me and I'm going left to right to left to right, like weaving
you're
all over.
Zigzagging.
Yeah.
Would you say your freewheel, is that the one that sits in the back of your chair?
No, so it's the one which lifts you off your casters. So you kind of like clips onto your foot plate or like the two posts of your chair and lifts you off the two smaller casters to put you on one slightly bigger caster. So when you go over like a pothole or bumps or those kind of things, it just rides it a bit smoother. So it makes it not easier to push because you're on a slightly bigger wheel, but it makes it less likely to tip yourself out. So
Gotcha. So if you had to rank wheelchair basketball, CrossFit, and marathoning, what order would you put those in?
Marathoning at the bottom. It's a hard toss-up between CrossFit and wheelchair basketball. I think both serve a different purpose. Like CrossFit's a lot more accessible than wheelchair basketball because the box is 5 minutes from my house, whereas I have to travel an hour and a quarter to where I train for wheelchair basketball. And there's a lot more expense associated with wheelchair basketball in hiring a court and getting the time to go and put the shots up, practice with friends and such. Whereas CrossFit is always there. It's a short drive away. And it fits in so much better about my working schedule.
Although I would say I think something that probably is nicer about wheelchair basketball is the teamwork side of it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're never just kind of churning it out by yourself. You've always got somebody there with you. And it satisfies my team sporting needs. As opposed to like the CrossFit, which is my individual like responsibility. If something goes wrong, it's my fault, or I need to train harder, or it's a weakness for me. I like the fact that you win and lose as a team. And when you're doing wheelchair basketball, it's not quite as individual as CrossFit.
Yeah, I was talking with Noah Cook, who's a rookie, who's blind, and he was saying he really enjoyed CrossFit, but he really enjoys goal ball and like other blind sports that you play as a team because the lifestyle of being someone who's blind is so isolating. Yeah. So then you take that with a sport like CrossFit that is also a rather isolating sport, right? Is you versus you. A lot of athletes will say, right, it's me versus me. It's you versus you, that kind of thing. Yeah. But then when you do that, when you also have a disability that kind of makes you feel even more removed, he was like, oh my gosh, finding team sports was really that balance for me. They gave me the ability
definitely.
to feel more connected.
Yeah, I do. As I say, I like both of them. Both of them hold quite like a different role. But it's nice how accessible CrossFit is. Whereas wheelchair basketball, I just love the camaraderie you have between just your friends and teammates. You get it similarly in the box with the other people who are participating in the sessions. But when you're doing additional sessions on top of that, they're often by myself after the workday, after all the classes have finished in the evening, while everyone's leaving and they're locking up the box for the day. I'm showing up.
Yeah.
And so it's quite a different environment.
Yeah. So you were telling me that you've been doing CrossFit on and off for about 10 years. But you've actually never done CrossFit in an unadaptive way because you had an injury when you were younger that kind of made you a semi-adaptive athlete until your bigger injury that happened about, a year and a half ago?
Yeah, so basically, I had a riding accident in 2009, got kicked by a horse and broke my leg in 3 places and was left with permanent nerve injury. So my foot, I had dropped foot. After that, I had multiple, I think I had probably 6 or 7 surgeries on my knee and 2 or 3 surgeries on my foot. And I had my ankle joint removed, I had my ankle fused. So I would have classified as an athlete back then, but at that point I was young and I tried to avoid all para sports. I just thought I could keep up with my able-bodied counterparts, and where I couldn't, I found some ways into para sport, but I was still adamant that I didn't need that. I should just carry on. I should just be good enough. And when I then when I then trained at the box I was training at prior to the most recent accident, I did talk about adaptive CrossFit once because I used to watch the CrossFit Games all the time on the telly, followed like some of the athletes and such, and they dismissed it and they basically said, oh, you'll never be a games athlete. That's not something that we'll do. Like adaptive, we don't really know all that much about it. And that was it. I just accepted that and carried on adapting things in the way that when you've got an ankle which doesn't move and a foot that you can't feel, just adapted it in the way that kind of felt right with that. So yeah, that's what I'd done up until that point. And I'd always, whenever I've moved around the country, I'd always found a CrossFit box near to where I was. I had a great CrossFit box when I lived up in Scotland for a bit. Claymore CrossFit were absolutely fantastic. They were so good at adaptations. They were so good at teaching things. And the classes were just great. So I was sad when I then left Scotland and had to leave that box behind and went back to my original box at home, which had always really been a constant for about 10 years. But yeah, was just adapting things as and when needed with that ankle injury and knee problems.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have known because we didn't have the exposure to adaptive CrossFit necessarily to know that like, oh, that's lower minor, right? Like you would go, oh, okay, I can see some workouts, find some stuff that might give me an idea of what the weights are, what the modifications are, right? When I started CrossFit, adaptive wasn't a thing in 2016. Like it wasn't until after COVID that I really found that, oh, there is a way to do this with CP, with cerebral palsy, right? I was just like talking to a couple of guys in message groups who were like, yeah, I weightlift with CP, here's some of the stuff I do, here's some of the numbers I hit, that kind of thing. But now we have so much more resources where 14-year-old you nowadays would be like, oh, Bailey Hooper, oh, like any of these other lower minor people to be like, let's see what we kind of do.
Yeah, whereas the only thing I used to avoid was running. Running, I'd just be like, I can't do that. I'd jump on a bike or I'd jump on a rowing machine and I'd just turn out, twice the distance of whatever they were running on that piece of kit, because that was my main adaptation. Everything else, I pretty much knew what I needed to do, but I just didn't realize there was actually a space where it encouraged you to do these adaptations, or it had more prescribed things which were more suited to my needs. I was just keeping up with my able-bodied counterparts, doing what I needed to do or what I could do. It's cool to now realize that is the case, and that is the case in so many different things. I could have played wheelchair basketball for years before I did, but I never knew that was even an option for me because, as I say, it just stubborn teenage me tried to avoid everything para because I just thought, well, I'll just carry on. I'll be fine.
So then about 18 months ago, you said you had another accident, and this is what kind of put you in a wheelchair and kind of had you thinking about wheelchair basketball and rediscovering CrossFit.
Yeah, so I had a skiing accident. I got taken out by a snowboarder and I ruptured my ACL, MCL and tore my meniscus. And it's hard to rehab an ACL at the best of times, but it's even worse when you've got a not great ankle and an ankle which is fused and you can't feel properly. So I had the reconstruction surgery in the March 2023, I think it would have been, on 2024. And about 2 weeks after that, I had sepsis for the first time. I got a massive post-op infection in my knee, and was incredibly poorly with it. And throughout that summer, between that March and the October, I had sepsis 3 times, had 7 surgeries on my knee. I was lucky to make it through, let alone just lose my leg. And I was told multiple times I'd never stand again. I'd be lucky if I ever got out of bed. Like, I was on bed rest, but all the time I was in hospital. They even took the chair out of the hospital room because they didn't want me sitting in it. They wanted me sitting in the bed with my legs in the air, trying to do absolutely everything they could. I was under professors of infectious diseases to try and get this really quite significant infection under control. And I think I had every complication under the sun that summer, in all different systems of my body, just because it wasn't coping particularly well with with all of the infection that I was having and all the surgery that I was having. And then ultimately I was told that never play sport again. That was the one thing I always remember, laying in my hospital bed. Like, I had quite a nice room. I was in isolation because there was a risk that I could pass that infection on to other people on the ward.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember looking out my big glass window to the side, and this professor of the bone infection team coming in and saying, "You'll never play sport again. You'll be lucky if you can ever even stand." And just almost laughing at him, thinking that's not the case. Like, of course I'll do that. But then the reality of that starts to sink in, and you think, maybe I won't do that. Maybe that's not something that's on the cards for me. And everyone just kept telling me how lucky I was to still be alive, let alone be only in the position where I was losing my leg because of that sepsis 3 times. Like, some people are far less fortunate than me. And when it got to that last surgery where I had to make the decision, I was given a couple of options, but ultimately there was only really one clear option, which was that above knee amputation. I made that decision and I went ahead with it. And I don't think until after my amputation surgery, I realized how poorly I'd been up until that point, because I didn't realize what it was to feel well again until a significant amount of that infection had been cut off. But even after my surgery, my femur still tested positive for infection. So there was a huge risk that it could flare back up. And I got to have further surgery on my stump to make it a bit more livable day to day. But there's a big risk with that the infection flares up again. So I've had to put that off twice for CrossFit. So that's scheduled for October this year.
Today's episode is supported by Equip Products. If you've listened to one of our episodes with a seated athlete, you might find yourself wondering, how do they do double unders? Well, Equip's multi-ropes are the answer, designed specifically for seated and adaptive athletes to get the same stimulus as any other athlete in the gym. No modifications that feel like workarounds, just real training. Head to equipproducts.com to check out the full lineup and find what works for you. So there is fear then that if you do this surgery, this elective surgery to kind of fix the stump a little bit more, that it could cause the infection to reappear?
Yeah, so because that femur tested positive for infection above where they amputated, I had like a strong course of antibiotics for a few months after my surgery, but there's a chance that the infection could be laid there dormant. So my surgeons have decided when they go in next time, so 3 plastic surgeons are doing it together. They're going to take a full bone core the whole way up my femur to see whether any bits of that femur still test positive when they try and grow it under the microscope. So there's a big risk when they go back in that we could have to have a higher level amputation, or we could be back in the position with sepsis or some serious infection again. So I've been trying to put that one off.
Sure. But I can imagine too that making that decision to do the amputation, you started feeling well again, in the sense that you were like, okay, now I can get up, I can move, I can make decisions, right? Like living life in a wheelchair. While that may not be the vision that you had 18 months ago, it's still a decision that's now allowing you to play wheelchair basketball, do competitive adaptive CrossFit, right?
100%.
What's been that like mental journey like?
I think because I've grown up for so long with having to adapt things because of my disability, I don't think it hit me as hard as it would have done some people who'd come off the street and never been privy to having a disability or having to adapt. I think after that summer, I became a lot more patient because I spent so many hours just sitting in my hospital room by myself, staring at these pale green walls, that you have a lot of time to think. And I thought, well, if I've been given this opportunity, which so many other people haven't in my position after sepsis, then I should make the most with it. Like, I shouldn't just say no. I shouldn't just sit there. Like, it would be so easy just to sit there at home, not work, not play sport, just become really quite a recluse and not able to do these things because I've had my leg amputated. I can't do this. I use a wheelchair in what is quite an inaccessible world. But I didn't want to take no for an answer. I'm quite stubborn. I'm quite driven, and that wouldn't have been me if I'd have done that. So I think one of the best things I did was about a month after I came out of hospital with my amputation, I went to a Paralympic ID day, which is some of these days they host in the UK where you can try like a host of different sports.
Yeah.
So I went and did that, and that's where I tried wheelchair basketball. I tried various bits and pieces and thought, actually, there is a place for me in the sporting community. And I needed something to replace the team sports and the sport which I'd been doing previously. And at this point, I'd suffered the kind of rejection from my previous CrossFit box, which didn't want me to go back. So I was absolutely desperate for some kind of sporting outlet, because my whole life I'd always turned to sport in every occasion. Even when I'd been recovering from surgeries, I'd still been at CrossFit. I remember being at CrossFit with my leg set in a full leg cast from my groin to my toe and sitting on the rowing machine with a foam roller under my foot to make sure I could still keep up with it. So I think that was the biggest thing for me, alongside the Matt Hampson Foundation and all of the support and access to services I got through that, because I became a beneficiary in, I think, the January, not that long after my amputation surgery. And that's when I started going down to Hambo regularly. I think I went before Christmas to go look at the centre, but didn't really start my treatment until the January. And they've enormously helped me, like being around people who just get on with life and follow their mantra of get busy living. That's helped enormously for me to keep doing things and saying yes to things and just giving them a go.
Yeah. And when you say January, that's January of 2025 or 2026?
It would be January of 2025, I think.
So you've had like a year and a half of of being in a wheelchair, of kind of living life as an above knee amputee. Okay.
Yeah. So I had my surgery in October 24, so it would have been January 25.
Okay. So there's a part of your story that we talked about before we went live, and I just want to summarize it real quick. And that's that when you tried to go back to CrossFit in your wheelchair at your affiliate that you'd been a part of for a long time, they kind of just stonewalled you a little bit and had some concerns, but they didn't have the education to try and make that an accessible place for you when you were in a wheelchair. And that was so unfortunate, because I think so much of the work that Adaptive CrossFit is trying to do, whether it's people like the Adaptive Athlete Experience or the Adaptive Training Academy or Adapt Aon, right? Or Wadaptive, is trying to say, y'all, you can come into these gyms. Sorry, that was a really American way to say it. But y'all can come into these gyms and like, we can train these trainers on how to be ready to meet you where you're at. And it felt like your previous affiliate just wasn't ready to do that work. And so it's beautiful. What I love about your story is that you found the Matt Hampson Foundation, but you also found another CrossFit affiliate. And this CrossFit affiliate like welcomed you with open arms.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like the gym which I'd been going to previously, the one I'd been a part of for the best part of 10 years, I'd been to a couple of times after my original knee surgery and adapted a few things. So I'd still gone back. I wasn't training as regularly as I'd have liked, but that was around how well I was or how the surgeries were kind of going and what I was allowed to do. So I was used to adapting things. Like they'd always accepted me when I'd had my leg set straight. So I couldn't understand the shift as to when I had my leg amputated and now I was using a wheelchair rather than just crutches or whatever it may be, that suddenly this place was inaccessible for me. It was a ground floor industrial unit. There was no barriers in the sense that it was upstairs, you couldn't quite get to it or anything like that. It was just, they were worried about my liability in the sense that I might impact other people's sessions by being there in my chair, or they don't have the time to spend with me, or they need additional insurance because having somebody in a wheelchair is risky, which is not the case in the slightest. And I do everything I can to minimize impact on other people's sessions and such. And it wouldn't have been what I wanted to do in the slightest. But having those doors closed on me, it put me off CrossFit for quite a while. It took me the best part of a year to then go back and find a CrossFit gym and just speak to another CrossFit box owner to say, hi, this is me. Like, I use a chair. Am I okay to come here? And that took some doing. And that's what I did in obviously January of this year. And after the way that box worked is when you inquired about it, they had like an informal phone call with you just to tell you about what they did. Because obviously there'd be people going to it who've never entered a CrossFit gym before, don't really know what CrossFit is. And I had a conversation with them then and said, this is me, above knee amputee. Like, I just want to get back to some general fitness. I used to do CrossFit, keen to adapt everything. And they were just like, yeah, come along. And I couldn't believe how accessible it was. And every single coach in that gym, every single member, I can honestly say I've never been in such a accepting environment. Everybody was just so lovely. And I was not expecting it in the slightest because of my past experience. And the coaches were trying things sitting down. They were trying things on one leg. Often in my sessions, like, I'll get out of my chair and sit on the floor, and my coach will get in my chair and try it from my chair to see quite how that works. Like, the amount of times they've tipped themselves out backwards, it's quite funny. Like, that CCTV, there's a lot going on in that gym from when they've tried to do a few things and not really realised how unstable the chair is. Yeah. But I love the fact that they'll give anything a go, and they'll try it from my perspective too, not just that this is how it should be. They want to feel it for themselves. And members are the same. Like, sometimes they'll say, can I have a go? And I'm like, of course you can, and give them my, equipped ropes, or give them whatever they need to try and do something similar to me. And yeah, everyone's been so supportive and lovely in that environment.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it's because of the British accent, but I'm thinking of Ted Lasso when he said, be curious, not judgmental. You know? And I just think that embodies exactly what this new affiliate is for you. Right? Getting in your chair, right? Being like, hey, can I feel what this feels like? Can I hold these equipped multi-ropes? Can I see how this works? Like, that curiosity, I feel like, is creating a community now where you feel welcome and accepted. And I think that energy is like flowing into you and setting you up for first place in the open, first place in semis. Like, when you're loved and supported and cared for, it's like, oh man, there's all this invisible energy behind you just pushing you forward.
Yeah, they just so, as I said, I've never really been in an environment quite like it. None of the CrossFit boxes I've been to previously, even when they've been the best environments, have been quite as supportive as what I've found there. Like, I normally go to the 7 a.m. class in the morning because I like to get it in before my day's work, or sometimes 6 a.m. And every person I've come across, like, it's never oh, can you do that? Or what are you going to do for this? Because they're genuinely intrigued to like what your adaptation is. And then when they try it, like, my favorite one that people try is like a seated wall ball. And they just look at you and they're like, oh, it must be so good not having to do a squat. And you see them like barely make a 6-foot target with a 3-kilo wall ball. And they're like, wow, this is humbling. Or they're tipping themselves out almost backwards because they're leaning back too much in it. So it's great that they're all just so keen to understand what it is like to be in that chair, or what it is like to try and do those things to the adaptive standard. And when they realize that they can't RX the workout like in the able-bodied form, they can't even do any form of the adaptive form, they're quite humbled by it not being the easiest thing, by just being sitting there in my chair.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Speaking of your chair and wall balls, who's going to be your chairman or your chairperson at your wheelman? That's the word, at your chairperson. Who's going to, never mind. Who's going to be your wheelman in San Jose?
Yeah, so I'm taking, 5 people from my CrossFit box are actually flying out to support me, which I absolutely did not expect in the slightest, because I've only been going there since January. And for 5 people to fly from the UK, like pay for their flights, pay for their accommodation, go out there and do that, I just wasn't expecting it at all. So one of the guys who's going out, Ben Hamilton, I train with him at most of my 7 a.m. classes. So he held my chair in the semis, and he's going to hold my chair out there too. So he's really excited to it. And him and his wife have basically made it happen and sorted out all the flights, the accommodation, everything for everyone. So they're all flying together, traveling together. And it's really exciting from that.
What is the name of your CrossFit affiliate? I feel like they need a shout out, because this is some serious
It's CrossFit Broth.
CrossFit Broth? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. How do you spell that?
So they're honestly great. BROUGH.
Okay. Cool. Everybody, y'all need to go check them out, follow them. Like, this is just so cool. This community, 5 of them like coordinated their flights. They're coming to cheer you on. Like, that's just, and you just joined there in January, right? They're so bought in on the vision of what you can do, what you can accomplish. That's just so cool. Yeah.
I don't think it's even sunk in that they've done that. Like, they've had their flights booked a few weeks now, probably about a week after everything was confirmed, they then booked their flights. And I just didn't think it was actually going to happen. And then they have, and they're all sorted. And there's the California chat going while they're all trying to plan bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a whole different, I just didn't expect to be in that position, and also to have the support from those people, as I say, who I've known for 6 months, to be wanting to travel halfway around the world to support me doing this adaptive sport is crazy.
Yeah. So you talked about Ben supporting you through semis. What was semifinals like for you? I mean, that, the intensity picked up a little bit, the gymnastics picked up a little bit.
Yeah, so I hadn't had the best run up to semis because I'd had the London Marathon. So it was only
just the London Marathon.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'd been away with work for 3 days, 3 or 4 days, the week of the actual semis. So I hadn't trained while I'd been away because I'd been so full on with the conference that I'd been at, that it was not the best start that I would have liked, and I wasn't particularly well. So I would have liked a bit better preparation for it. Semis were fantastic though. Again, the box were just so supportive of everything that came through. People came, I did 2 of my workouts on the Saturday and 2 on the Sunday, and was told explicitly by my coach that I wasn't allowed to redo anything because we weren't filming anything ever again. And we did that. And so many people showed up for me. They showed up on their Saturdays, on their Sundays, to just come to the box and cheer me on. One of the girls from my 7 a.m. class did 2 of the workouts with me. And they just kind of did it in the background. So I wasn't just there working out by myself in the semis, which was quite cool. And she was very much humbled by what was expected of her.
What version of the workout did she do?
Hannah did it was the 26.4, but she couldn't do it with the 10 kilo dumbbell. She had to drop down to, I think, a 7.5.
Oh, wow.
To try and keep up. And about halfway through, she was like, this is the longest, I think, was it 6 minutes or 8 minutes?
Yeah, it was a 6
minutes. The
minute.
longest 8 minutes of my life. Yeah.
Oh
it was quite
did
fun
she
to see
do
that.
it standing or seated?
No, she sat on a bench to try and do it to get exactly the
Gotcha.
same kind of feeling as what I was going through. In the gymnastics one, 26.3, another girl from my box, she's actually coming out to California. She did it with me, but she just kind of did it in the corner. So I kept seeing her out of the corner of my eye doing bits and pieces for it. So it was nice just to feel like you weren't by yourself going through that filming and doing all of that recording.
Yeah. And then you were telling me that during the Open, you realized that, oh, wait, I need some gear to make this thing work better. And I think single unders or multi-ropes came up in the semis. So in between the Open and the semis, did you place an order with a sponsor of this show, Equip Products?
Yeah, I had to order a lap mat because I swiftly realised after doing the Open that it wasn't really feasible to do that without a lap mat, because my full leg is the exact width of the gap in a dumbbell. So every time I put the dumbbell down on my lap between snatches, I was having to kind of roll it down my leg to get it off my knee to then be able to snatch it back up again. And my knee was black and blue from all of those. And obviously a barbell is not the most comfortable thing landing on your lap either. So I did that. And Hambo kindly lent me some. I think it was actually through Wadaptive. They lent me some of the Equip ropes. So I still don't own my own Equip multi ropes because I haven't placed the order for that yet. But yeah, I've been using those for obviously the semis when they came up. And assault bike wise, I'm still very much on the handles of the assault bike, the not quite right way. So yeah.
Okay. Can I interest you in a lightning round?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. If we're in the gym working out, what are we listening to?
Sadly, whatever somebody's put on CrossFit Bros playlist, which is sometimes some quite heavy house music or popular music, quite quick. But personally, my playlist,
what if you get to pick?
Playlist. Yeah, so a bit of country, a bit of Zach Bryan, a bit of Luke Combs, sometimes a bit of Meatloaf, just to shake things up. So quite the eclectic mix of a bit of everything.
Debbie O'Connell was on the podcast, and she also said that one of her choices would be Meatloaf, and I just love that. Meatloaf was a staple of my childhood. Not the food, I mean the guy, the band. So yeah. Okay, that's wonderful. I love that. What's your favorite way to spend a rest day?
Favorite way to spend a rest day? Probably take my chair out with my dog. My dog's called Moose. She's a curly coat retriever, and she'll be featuring on my t-shirt. Well, a moose will be featuring on my t-shirt for like supporting me to get to the games.
Yeah.
But yeah, taking her out somewhere, taking her like to the countryside, using my tri-ride to get about is great.
Okay. What's one goal that you're working towards outside of fitness?
Does wheelchair basketball count as fitness?
I mean, it counts. All right, let's go with wheelchair basketball. So you're working on that goal, and then what's one goal that's not athletics related?
Trying to get the house in the state that I would like it. Having bought a house in December, me and my partner James are trying to go through, renovate the rooms, and it's significantly more difficult in a chair to like panel a wall and paint a wall than it was when I used to have two legs. So just working through room by room, trying to get it how we'd like it.
Okay. That's fun. I would not appreciate how hard that would be in a chair, but now that you're mentioning it, I can imagine just how hard that would be.
Retractable rollers are the solution to everything.
There you go. Yeah. What would be your ideal workout?
Ooh, I do like a wall ball. Wall ball, anything heavy barbell. I like a bit of barbell cycling or like a 1 rep max. I would love it if we got a 1 rep max bench at the games, but obviously bench is so seldom found in CrossFit. It's quite sad.
At the 23 games, they had a 3 rep max bench for the seeded athletes.
I'd love that. Please bring that workout back again.
All right, Kevin, if you're listening, we need the 3 rep max bench for seated, deadlifts for everybody else. That's what it was.
Perfect.
That's what it was in 2023. All right. Yeah. I've got 2 final questions for you as we wrap up. These aren't lightning round questions, so you can take your time on them. If there's somebody listening to this podcast who is interested in trying adaptive CrossFit, maybe wants to step into an affiliate, what would you tell them to encourage them?
Just give it a go. Like, you've got to go with an open mind. And I think the thing which I found going back to CrossFit this time in my chair was when people would say, what do you think about this movement? I wouldn't just say no. I'd just say, let's give it a go. Let's try, let's see. We drop the weight down, we scale the movement back, we strip it back, try and get the same stimulus as what your able-bodied counterparts are doing. And a good coach will work with you to do that. But I also found it helpful for myself looking at what those workouts are going to be and having a bit of a think myself as to what I'd like to do to kind of get the same stimulus as what they are, and just trying it, because until you've had a go, you don't know whether you can do it or not. You don't know if your body's going to allow you to do it. You don't know if it's something which is feasible in the chair. And I think there's just so much resource out there when you find the right people around you. Like, one of the best people who's been phenomenally helpful to me is George Thompson at the Matt Hampson Foundation. So he's one of the sports therapists. He does a fair bit of CrossFit programming and is obviously very familiar in the adaptive space. And he's been so great because I can just pick up the phone to him or drop him a WhatsApp and he'll sit in a chair and send me a video of this is how you should do it. And it's been so helpful to me and my coaches of just receiving those bits and pieces here and there from George, or George helping me like work on some of my weaknesses and saying, well, this is the adaptive standard. This is what you can do to scale it back. This is how we then get up to that point. That's been pivotal in my like return to CrossFit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so cool. Like, we talk often in coaching about, seeing and correcting. But when you're adaptive, sometimes it's harder to get the seeing and the correcting in. And so I love that George sends you videos to kind of help you literally see and then see what alternatives are.
Yeah, exactly. It's been so helpful.
That's really cool. All right. Final question. If you could go back and talk to a younger version of yourself, maybe in the hospital room 2 years ago, or maybe even when you were 14 dealing with that first injury, what would you tell younger Tori to encourage her?
I think just that it's okay to be different. It's okay to need adaptations, and you just need to give it a go. I think younger me back after my first accident was so in denial that the fact that I was disabled, that this was a permanent thing which was never going to get better, that I just tried to keep up with able-bodied friends. I just tried to keep up with the able-bodied fitness space, be that like playing hockey, field hockey, or be that CrossFit, and just keeping up in the able-bodied side, because I didn't let myself have those adaptations, because I saw it in my own head as something that, well, I should be able to do this. There's no space for me. But realizing now that there very much is a space for me, and even more so after obviously my second accident, is that it's okay to do that. You'll find your place, and you just need to find the right people around you. Because I think the people around you have such an influence on your day-to-day, your mindset. Like being in the atmosphere that I am at CrossFit Brough with the people involved in that, you feed off one another. Like they inspire me to keep going. They keep me going through those difficult workouts. They push me to be better. Even more so now, a group of them are coming out to the games with me, because I just never foresaw my 2026 to be out doing the CrossFit Games in America. If you'd have asked me in January, I wouldn't have seen that, let alone 2 years ago when I'm in that hospital bed wondering if I'm ever going to stand again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's wonderful. Tori, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the podcast. If there's one thing you take away from this one, is what Tori said near the end. You'll find your place. You just need the right people around you. That's true whether you're new to adaptive CrossFit or you're the coach trying to figure out how to welcome someone in. If you want to root for Tori, keep an eye out for her in the seeded 2 division at the Adaptive CrossFit Games and give CrossFit Brough a follow. That's BROUGH. I'm definitely not pronouncing that right. I can't believe that 5 of their members are flying out to California to cheer her on. If this episode moved you, do me a favor, follow the show, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. That's how we keep this thing going. I'm Matt Hotho, and I'll see you next time.